Hi, I'm Gavin Evans. I'm Head of Performance Development at Table Tennis England, former international player and youth European champion. And you're watching Time Out.
So Gav, obviously we're here outside the ETC Sheffield EIS. Tell us why we moved here for the National Centre.
We moved here because it's a fantastic facility. We have a world-class environment. We've got access to fantastic world-class equipment, gym space, and all of the stuff that's going to support us in our ambition to reach in the world stage. We've got a really ambitious strategic plan, and we want to be credible medal winners in the Olympic Games, World Championships, and in order to do that, it was about getting into an environment that does that. You know, it breeds medals, breeds success, and being a part of that environment will allow us to learn the world-class behaviour that's necessary to take our athletes to the highest heights.
Block ball back anywhere, you play a forehand, good placement, speed.
So Gavin, you are the Head of Performance Development at Table Tennis England. Tell us a little bit about that role.
Yeah, so the main parts are split into three areas. So you've got a performance programme, which is very much that happens here at the English Institute of Sport, where all of our best athletes train, and I manage that programme and lead the strategic direction of that programme. There's a talent pathway that is huge space, huge area, where there are 7 pathway development centres around the country, lots of talent identification stuff that happens in the pathway, and ultimately the aim is to build a really, really great pathway for talented athletes to be a part of, who will then move into the performance programme at a very high level, so raising that level. The other bit is around our coach learning and development, so bringing coaches on the journey with us. So we've got thousands of really, really great coaches out there, and it's being able to help, engage, inspire, upskill, whatever you want to call it really, but bring coaches on that journey with us to support us in our Olympic ambition. Without having great coaches who are working with us, we're going to find it very difficult to reach those ambitions.
So before we talk any more about coaching, what we want to talk to you about is before coaching. Gavin Evans before life as an England coach. So Gav, as a player, you were probably the first, I think it was a fact that you were the first player to ever be ranked, the youngest player to ever be ranked at 6 years old. What was it like? How did you get into the sport?
So I had a mum and dad who were very heavily involved in the sport, played on a high level. My dad was chairman of Sippenham Table Tennis Club, so it was an amazing club down in Slough, and my journey was every night of the week I'd go down to Sippenham, and really it just started out, I enjoyed being there. It was that family environment. I remember one of my first memories is when I was about 3 or 4. The first thing I learned in the Sippenham Table Tennis Club was how to tie my shoelaces.
Right.
And I remember sitting in the middle of the double doors as you go into the hall, and every person who came through the doors, I said, could you teach me how to tie my shoelace? It took me 1 or 2 days, and I conquered how to do that. And then I guess started playing on the table, went to league matches with my dad, and that's how it all started. And very quickly was playing an awful lot of table tennis and started to win things pretty quickly.
So table tennis for you is a massive family affair. I think it's right in saying that you've got over 50 national titles as a family. So tell us about your family that played and what level they played to.
Yes, so I'm one of 4 boys. So I've got 3 brothers, all played to a really high level, multiple national titles between them all. I have, won lots of national titles. So as a family unit, there are a lot of titles in there. We gave up our lives for table tennis. We'd travel the entire breadth and length of the country, going to all of the competitions, playing every night of the week, and it was something we did because we absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And I think because we loved it, we became successful at doing it.
What was it like competing against your brothers? Who was the best Evans brother?
That was sometimes good and sometimes a nightmare. I've got some stories, my word. I think equally so, me and Miles had some real battles at the Sippenham festivals where from time to time. It got very heated. And I remember one time at the Blackpool Four Star playing my brother Brad, who was, I think at the time, he was the current junior national champion or current cadet national champion. I can't remember exactly, but he was ranked number one in the cadets. And I'm like 4 years younger than he is. And I remember I was leading. And I remember him turning around to my dad and saying, "Dad, you have to tell him he's got to lose." And that was sort of how it was. We hated losing to each other, but we had some absolute epics. So yeah, both Brad and Miles, we played literally hundreds of times and had some really nice memories. But I think part of that sort of sibling rivalry is what got us to being the level we were.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting car journeys home. If I'd beaten one of them or they'd beaten me, there was some choice words in the car I can remember.
And talking about the level that you got to, Gav, you know, it goes without saying you were one of the best players of your age group and a difficult age group to come up with. Do you want to tell us about some of the players that you used to compete with and play alongside? I know you was world champion with Simon Gawsey in the doubles. Is that right?
Yeah. So strong era. I remember 2008 winning the European Championships as a cadet. I think I beat Simon Gawsey in the semi-final from losing and being down in that match. And I think right from the last 16, I was facing match points all the way through. And it was a really difficult, tournament. And that was credit to the amount of good players around at that time. But yeah, so Simon and I played at the Cadet World Challenge, and I think we beat China in the final.
Wow.
So yeah, we share that moment of being World Cadet champions at doubles, which is nice.
So who did you used to be coached by, and what was your background like in terms of coaching, in terms of playing at the highest level? You know, now obviously you're leading the way coaching, but who was leading that way back then, and what work did you have to put in behind the scenes?
So we, our national academy was where we are now many years ago, and then we had a period where it wasn't, and now we're back here. But I was under the leadership of Jai, who was Chinese coach, who was the national coach for about 15, 16 years. And yeah, it was a tough regime. I basically left school at 12 years old to follow my dreams. And I remember the performance director at the time was a guy called Steen Kist Hansen, and he sat my mum and dad down and said, "You're going to need to make a decision. Does Gavin go full-time tape test, or does he focus on school?" And at that point, I guess that was something that was encouraged. Maybe not so much now, but it certainly was back then. And we made the decision to go full-time table tennis, knowing that I could always pick up education later on down the line. And consequently, I went back to college at 22 and did all the exams. So Jai was very much our technical coach in the hall, training 30 plus hours a week, just really, really, really tough regime. There was a lot of emphasis on how physically fit and strong you were. And I think for my game, that was really important to feel like I was one of the fittest, if not the fittest in the room. But then the actual coach working with me when I won the European Championships was Alan Cook.
Right.
Alan was sitting in the corner, and when I went to competition, Alan did a lot of corner work with me, which was great. So yeah, there's been a lot of coaching on my journey.
And then what happened after that? You know, it must be a touchy subject for you to talk about a little bit. Obviously now you're in a really, powerful position, and also you've got a big responsibility as head of performance. But how did you transition from player into coach?
It was really tough at the time. I remember being, I think it was like number one in the world under 16. They had an under 16 world ranking list at the time, and I remember being one and suddenly having a very complex, serious hip operation, which led to another hip operation, which led to another hip operation. So I ended up having sort of 2 years out on crutches, and had the operations, went to live in Germany after I'd done my rehab and started training again, and I just couldn't keep up with the amount of hours needed to progress to the next level. And that was really heartbreaking, because obviously the sport I love and the sport I was doing quite well at ended up being difficult to pursue. So took a bit of time out, because I found coming into the tape was all quite emotional, quite challenging, always feeling like it should be me type thing. So did a number of different roles, some office jobs, did a bit of, I had a coaching business where I went into schools and delivered some extracurricular activity type work. Got qualified as a personal trainer, just tried my hand at a number of things. And then picked up coaching again on a private basis, doing quite a few one-to-ones. And then slowly got back into coaching. And I guess for me, it was about the acceptance of I can't now be an athlete. What's the next best thing?
Yeah.
And it was, can I be a fantastic coach? Can I, with all the knowledge and the experience I've had on my journey, can I give that and help to shape other people's lives through table tennis and help them to be really successful in it? And that was what my motivation was.
Did you ever see yourself being involved with the England squad or head of performance as you are now? What was your aim with the coaching?
I don't actually know. I mean, did I see myself back then doing what I'm doing now? Probably not. But I think as I got into it, the passion was there. I'm really motivated, ambitious. And I guess day by day, I just got closer to doing that role. I was working with the England talent pathway for a few years while being head coach at Grantham College for about 4 years, and then went into being men's captain and led the team into Birmingham Commonwealth Games, and it just progressed really. But yeah, I can't remember thinking one day that that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
It's just happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So one of the first times I really saw you coaching was you worked with a young player called, as some people might know, Tom Jarvis.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, that was great. So Tom and I worked together for many years. I think I met Tom for the first time when he was maybe 9 or 10 years old. And then when he got to maybe 13 or 14, I started to do some practice with him and did a lot of many hours training, coaching Tom around the country, which was great.
What is it like now as a coach? Do you miss playing? And where do you think that you could have gone to if you were still playing now?
I do miss playing. I think, if I didn't have the pains in my body that I would have when I play, I would still be playing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely miss playing. But the coaching side and being able to shape the future of our next generation, being able to shape the results that happen at the highest level and stuff is something that I'm really comfortable with now and I really enjoy. So yeah, I think I'll always feel like what could have happened, what could I have been if I hadn't have got so severely injured. But that's one of those things, right?
Yeah, of course it is. But as you mentioned there, you take great pride in your job that you have now. But what's the responsibility like of doing that? You're not only in charge of shaping certain players' future, but you're in charge of shaping the whole pathway.
Yeah, it's a great responsibility, something that I relish and I thrive on. I try and do the very best every day that I can do, and I always think if I can, at the end of the day, look myself in the mirror and think I've done my very best today and I've given the opportunities to the players who deserve the opportunities, then I can be proud of myself.
Yeah, of course.
The one thing I'm always trying to do is talk to as many people as possible and understand their perspectives and start to think, okay, how do we learn from what people are telling me, and how do then we put that into shaping the next steps for future generations?
Because I know when you used to coach me at Grantham College, and one of the things that you used to talk about quite heavily was having that national training centre and the importance of it.
Yeah.
How did that come about? How did we end up being in where we are now, Sheffield?
So the big thing for me was we were losing so many days of players travelling overseas to get some good practice. And I always felt as well, it's really tough if your journey is get good at a sport and then you have to leave the country you grew up in for the next 10 years to get to the next level. I always find that's a really hard sell and not necessarily great for people's well-being.
Yeah.
So my view was, how do we get a national centre that we can do that? How do we get great sparring over so we can have our best players training in our country? And it would take time. It's not something that suddenly we're here now, we turned on the lights and everything's perfect. But the strategy is that bit by bit, we improve our environment to the point where we have people from around Europe wanting to come here to train. And that will ultimately help all of our athletes who come here and practice, and they won't have to then spend 50 days a year travelling to France, Sweden, Germany to try and find their sparring.
Yeah, and obviously we're here now outside the EIS. Let's jump on the table and see if you still got it.
Yeah, certainly.
So Gav, obviously we're inside the training hall now.
Yep.
Inside the ETC. And the last thing we spoke about was some of the people and your role as head of performance development.
Yep.
How do you manage so many people, players and coaches?
In all honesty, it's the amazing people I have in the team, all of their talent. Without the people in the team who help pull this stuff together, it wouldn't be possible. It's great coaches, great support staff, great operational staff. They help bring it all together. Without really, really talented, amazingly supported people, I wouldn't look so good.
How do you prioritise what needs to happen, and how do you reflect on what work you're doing and improve on that?
I think we start from our ambition, what our vision is for performance program, and we work down and we think, okay, so this is what we want to achieve. How do we get to that in every stage? So what do we need to do in the performance program? What do we need to do in the talent pathway? What do we need to do from a coach's perspective? How do we upskill coaches to support us on our journey? And ultimately then work together every day as hard as we can to make the dream become a reality. Yeah.
But what is some of England's aspirations and goals next 5 years and then next 10 years and short term?
So the Olympic Games is the priority, and everything we do is working towards being a credible medal winner at an Olympic game, whether that be in 2032 Brisbane or beyond. It's difficult to say the exact time when we envisage that happening, but ultimately everything we do in our talent pathway, in our coach development learning system, and in our performance programs, it's on a daily basis working towards that. Now, along the way, some of the KPIs might be multiple European youth medals, multiple world youth medals, and then building it through into senior European and world medals before we know that we're capable of being super successful on that Olympic stage.
How do we catch, the global powerhouses like China, Japan, Sweden and Germany just in Europe? What do we have to do to close that gap?
It's an incredibly tough ask. So the exact answer I don't know, other than we have to be better today than we were yesterday, and tomorrow than we were today. And ultimately we have to have great coaches to help us. One of the things that most of the best countries have, so you talk about China, talk about France, Germany, they have great coaches around their areas. So in their regions, they have hundreds of coaches, and we will never have the resource to be able to pay for that amount of coaches. So what we need to think about is, how do we bring coaches who are wanting to go on that journey with us? So, what we do here is maybe the top 10, 15%, but the 75, 80, 85% of an athlete's journey is at club level, is at regional level. And we've got to really support coaches to help us on our way. So in answer to your question is better and great coaches in the area supporting. So when they come through these doors, they're on a very high level, and we do that icing on the cake.
At the high end, obviously it's been less than 10 years since England won a medal at the World Team Championships. And something that we can talk about is bringing that World Team Championships to London in 2026.
Yeah.
What does that mean for England?
Well, it's a huge moment. I think it's a statement of our ambition around major events, but having the World Team Table Tennis Championships in London is just an amazing opportunity to showcase what we're about, how we stage great events, but also put some really good teams together to make some great performances. And I'm hoping there'll be plenty of young players, or players who might not have even picked up the bat before, want to get involved in table tennis because what they see in London. So I think London could be the gateway for so many of our great athletes coming through the pathway in years to come.
For our, performance teams that are working hard right now, what's the next step for the kids that have just played the Europeans? how can they be challenging for, you know, a spot in that team?
For the seniors, exposure is a big one. So getting them used to the level, making them feel like they belong, they're confident at the level, and that experience is a critical one. So we've got a great opportunity coming up in December where we spend 3 weeks in China National Centre, where we selected 8 athletes to go to China for 3 weeks to go and experience what real world-class table tennis is about. And it's that with what they can take from that, the learning from that, and then getting them out onto the international circuit, making sure their daily training is what it needs to be. And then I think we will see athletes progress to the senior rank. So we saw Conor Green. He'd made his first senior debut at the European Championships in Austria.
It was amazing.
And he did fantastically well. And there's other athletes who are equally like Conor who should make that step in the next year or so, maybe a couple of years to prove that they have what it takes to be credible on the senior stage.
To what extent is, you speak about Conor there, and to what extent is the elite sport, especially table tennis, all about mentality? What's the difference between some of the senior top athletes? I know you spoke about exposure, but mentally, physically, what's the difference between our top senior athletes and our top junior athletes?
I think if I'm being brutally honest, we need to be fitter. We need to be stronger as athletes. I think if we were to benchmark ourselves against some of the better athletes in the world, we're not good enough when it comes to fitness and strength. But I also think from a mentality point of view, you look at some of the results in the European Senior Championships and some of the results that have gone before, we're getting very close, often within 1 or 2 points of winning matches, but we're not converting them as much as I'd like to yet. So now we've got to think about, okay, what mindset changes do we need to bring about? What help do we need to bring into the program to support athletes to convert nearly wins to wins? So we're working with a great psychologist at the moment, and I hope through the education that she brings to our program, we will start to see those converted a little bit more often into a win. But in answer to your question, table tennis is so heavily reliant on your ability to play your best when it most matters. And that takes mental toughness, mental strength, resilience, along with all of the physical attributes you need to have as well.
Yeah. When you look across the landscape of table tennis England and the sport in general, what do you think are your biggest frustrations and pet peeves?
So I wouldn't say I have too many frustrations. I have sometimes a feeling of we do lack resource, we do lack funding, and we're trying to do something mega on such a shoestring, which is really, really challenging. And I'm often asking too much of our coaches and staff, which I'm ever aware of. But I look at the talent pathway, and there's some really, really exciting young prospects. And it's about getting it right for those young athletes now, where we can facilitate good daily training, good competition exposure, and great coaching. And I honestly believe that in 5 or 6 years' time, our conversation will be very different. We'll have some really, really high-level juniors and young seniors coming through.
Oh, here he is. That is it. Former Youth Olympic champion. But speaking outside of just performance, in terms of table tennis itself, how do we elevate the sport, especially in England? And, we've just seen the WTT champions Montpellier. Look at the event that was. How do we make such an event in England, and how do we get more people in the sport?
Well, I think what is a real great example as how success on a massive scale can increase participation in the game and bring more people to the sport. I mean, the LeBron boys, Felix and Alexis, are just so good at the sport, and they've just reinvigorated table tennis in Europe. And what we saw in Montpellier was incredible. 41,000 fans across a few days. They had influencers driving up the crowd, so the crowd were electric and they were roaring. And what we saw over the last few days in Montpellier could be compared to what you'd see at a football match.
Yeah.
And that has to be exciting for table tennis in Europe. But I think, to answer your question, it's a mixture of both. Really, really good engagement with our fans. So building that audience who love the sport. But I also think success brings a whole new life to the game if you can be really credible on the world stage.
And obviously, you're always on the international stage yourself, former men's team captain, non-playing captain. Who are some of the coaches that influence you, or your role models, or when you look to reflect on your coaching, where do you look to for, say Nathaniel Mullen, the coach of Alexis and Felix? What do you look for that they'd kind of do and bring that back to here?
I think in Nathaniel's case, so Nathaniel Mullen, who is Alexis and Felix's coach, and the French team's coach now, it's his relationship with the boys, it's the way he supports them to be creative, it's very player-centred. It's the approach that I love in coaching, putting the player at the front of everything you do, but supporting them. It's one big, you see it's a family unit they've got, and he does a tremendous job. But then you also have coaches like Jörg Roskoff, who works for the German national team, operates out of Dusseldorf, been mega successful as a player and a coach, and he's also someone I have a conversation with from time to time, and he helps guide and support some of my thinking. Jürgen Persson from Sweden, they're all, you look at what Sweden did at the Olympic Games in Paris, it was just amazing. And so they're the conversations I like to have. And then a slightly different coach actually, who's equally successful, is Massimo Constantini. Used to be high performance director at ITTF.
Right.
And I have good dialogue with Massimo. So, those are the types of coaches I really do engage with. And, John and Carlo are fantastic coaches. I learn so much from John and Carlo on a daily basis. When we have coffees at competitions, when we have performance reviews, when we talk about the strategy in the next 3 to 5 years, their insight in the game because of what they've lived in the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's just incredible. I think they're up there with the best coaches in the world, Carlo and John, and we're incredibly lucky to have them.
And I know just being at the European Championships with you guys, you can see, you mentioned that relationship that Felix and Alexi have with their coach. You can see that's something that the players really value between yourself and John. But how do you build up that rapport on a personal level?
I think the biggest thing is trust. So the player knowing that you're there for them through thick and thin, you'll go the extra mile. I look at what Carlo and John and the coaches do on a day-to-day, hour basis. They work above and beyond. For me, like when a player sees a coach working as hard for them as John and Carlo do, you can only have that trust and respect, and then the relationship grows from there.
So Gav, we've just been talking about coaching internationally and some of the people that you get to have those conversations with. But you was also on the high performance coaching apprenticeship. What was that like, and who were some of the people that you shared some ideas with there?
So there's two courses I've been on. One was through UK Sport, which was incredibly valuable. I had the privilege of working with some great coach developers. One, namely Jay Roper, who's now Director of Education at British Gymnastics, and developing me as a coach. So really thinking about how I view the world, how others might view the world, what my coaching techniques and philosophy is, and all that type of stuff I found super, super helpful. And then I was on one with the ITTF in Sweden, where I worked with the likes of Jürgen Persson, Massimo Constantini, and that was also equally incredible. More table tennis focused, whereas the UK Sport one was very broadly coaching focused across multiple sports. But the one in Sweden was highly intensive around table tennis insight, and some of the insight that was shared was just remarkable. And I took that immediately and started to think about how we might implement that across our country.
No chance. And obviously you speak about the ITTF there, but now we don't not only know the ITTF, we have the WTT.
Yeah.
What do you think of the WTT platform, and what do you think it's doing for table tennis?
I think it's really, really good. I think it took a few years to develop. Obviously, it's very transformational what they've done with the sport, but the pyramid system of events, so you've got the youth tour, then you've got your feeder events at senior level, moving into contender events, then star contender and grand smashes. You've got a really nice pyramid where players can start to work their way through the ranks based on their ability. I think the way they've attracted a new audience to the sport, so the events are clearly more mega now. I mentioned Montpellier, Beijing, China Smash, Singapore Smash, the Champions events, the stuff they do in Macau is just incredible. So they've attracted a whole new audience. I think it's been fantastic for the sport. It needed a bit of regeneration, a bit more life into the sport, and now it opens the door for commercial sponsors that can only be positive for table tennis. And you know, if it can be anything like as big and as glamorous as the tennis tour one day, then I think it's been a great success. And having spoken to a lot of the senior leaders in WTT, I think they're doing a terrific job, and it's been a hard landscape to navigate. And in the next 2 to 3 years, I think it'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah. What I'd like to know is, from a coaching side, what's a WTT like for you, for John, for Carlo, from youth all the way to the champions? What's the difference between the events?
One big difference is on the youth tour, you go from match to match to match, so you have multiple matches in a day. On the senior tour, you have very few matches in the day, so you spend a lot of your time recovering and practicing in a training hall for your next match. And I think the smart countries are the ones that often use big, long events for training purposes as well, because you're on tour for so long. So you can be on tour for 20, 25 weeks a year, maybe more. And if you're not practicing in those moments, you're losing that amount of time when you're not practicing. So I think, a lot of the good countries, including ourselves, we try and adopt a stance where we go and we compete, but we also use it to practice, because you have so much downtime. On the senior part of the tour, the youth part is a whole different ballgame. That's just mega, match after match, and incredibly demanding on the coaches.
What kind of shapes how we go to the WTT tournaments? How do the players get selected? And also, how do you choose which WTT events our players go to?
So it's been something we've worked through, and we probably in the last year or so haven't quite got it right. But moving forward, we will, as a program, select a number of events out of the calendar that we will go to. So typically 8 events across the year. And then what we'll do is we will select athletes to play those events that will then go with a coach and be having all of the support they need to get the very best out of themselves. But the selection will be based on a number of things. 1 is commitment to our program. 2 is progress. 3 is their behaviours in the environment, because it's not all about winning at that stage. It's about how they commit themselves, how they behave in the environment, are they professional? And ultimately, if they're a professional athlete who gives everything to the sport, they've got a great chance of being selected.
Yeah. Can you talk about the talent pathway in the UK? How do you identify our talent, and what journey do you take athletes on from beginner to elite? Where do you come into that, and where does the England Training Centre, what does it act as for those players that are transitioning from beginner to elite?
So there's a number of ways you can get into the talent pathway. So one of the ways is you could be scouted through playing at your club or playing at local competition. And at that point you would be, if you met the standard, invited to the Pathway Development Centre. At that point, you would then be eligible to be selected for our Futures programme. And the Futures programme is our baseline programme where our most talented athletes from the areas come together. And they come together for about 50 days a year in our National Training Centre, and we start to develop them. They're very much part of the pathway. And then if they're good enough, they build their way through the pathway all the way to elite level, where they're ultimately living here full time and dedicating their lives to the game. In terms of pre-club level, there's a number of different ways that we activate talent. So we've got TT Kids program. We've got a talent identification framework that we will start to build out a network of scouts across our local area, and they will be armed with our talent identification framework, and they will start to introduce different players who we might not have seen from a national level to us, and then we would make a decision based on where they go from there.
Brilliant. I look forward to seeing this new coaching strategy. We spoke quite a lot about Gavin, the professional, the former professional table tennis player, England coach, and now head of performance development. But congrats, Gav. You're dad of 3 lovely girls.
Yep.
What's Gavin like off the table?
Dedicated family man. It's I get home, whether I've been abroad or whether I've been in Sheffield, I get home, I walk through the door, and I try to be the best husband and the best dad I can be. And I always wake up knowing how lucky I am. So I spend a lot of time abroad, a lot of time away from my family, and my amazing wife, Emily, never moans, never complains. She always supports what I do, and I know if it wasn't for Emily being so amazing, I just simply couldn't do that. So, you know, thank you to my wife there. And then my kids are the apple of my eye. You know, everything they want to do, I try to support, facilitate, and spend as much time with them as possible. And they keep me going through the tough times, if I'm honest. You know, sometimes this job does look glamorous, but it can be difficult. And when I get home through the front door and I've got 3 girls smiling at me, wanting me to play with them, that's an amazing feeling. So yeah, I'm an incredibly lucky man outside of my job, and I'm a dedicated family man.
And obviously we spoke earlier about how table tennis has impacted your family massively. But not only has it impacted your family, mum and dad, but how did you meet Emily?
Yeah, so Emily was a table tennis player. I met Emily through table tennis. We've been together now, what will it be? 11 years. We've been married for 7, anniversary last week. So yeah, it's very much a table tennis affair in that sense. I think that probably helps the understanding in the relationship, where Emily knows the demands of the job and the sport. So yeah, very fortunate. And I mustn't forget my Labrador. My Labrador is something that keeps the little bit of extra weight away, because I'm constantly going 3 or 4 mile walks in the morning with this bouncy 2-year-old lab who just wants to run, run and run.
So Gav, I feel pretty warm now. Should we have a set?
Yeah, let's do
Student
it.
against the former master.
Let's do it, yeah.
I love all I'll let you serve.
Oh,
Early switch.
early switch.
Oh.
No
Gav,
legs.
I think you need some tips here. Where's Carlo when you need him? Oh.
Yes, sir.
All this social media, I've lost my touch. Oh. He turns it on. You've got the energy on your side.
Oh yeah.
Got to go for it now. Play free.
Impression coming up. Oh!
I don't know who that was, but they mustn't be very good.
Come on, Connor.
This is my least favourite thing to do.
That's why I'm doing it.
Anybody watching?
This is how I won the Europeans. Lobbing. Oh!
You taught me something. Them 2 years was worth it. What score are we on? 8-1.
Oh, well played.
I think I might be earning a call up. Score?
It's 4-3 to you.
It's easy.
So it's cheap points. Yes!
Learning from the best. All this time at the ETC, pick something up from Connor Green.
Just ask me to taught him that.
Oh no.
Ah!
I was debating the rules, but I don't have it in me. Oh. Angles.
Hey?
Got me on the angles. 6-5. Oh! If these barriers weren't here, I'd have had that. 6-all, come on.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Found his weakness.
I think that one was the let.
Tactics. Aye, aye, aye.
God, I think just
Got to bend my legs.
no rotation. What would be my biggest weakness when I was at the college?
That one.
I can't talk and play, that's the problem. Talk too much.
Are you still an active player, Connor? I don't want to give people a tip.
Yeah. Let's keep it at when I was at the college.
When you were at the college.
What did we used to work on? I remember this, the famous one.
Yeah.
The backhand
More wrist in
technique.
the backhand. What's the score?
I think it's 10-6 to me.
10-6.
Oh.
Ali!
He looks sharp now. He's been taking it easy and now he's getting into it. No risk, no reward. Score, Gav.
I think it's 10-7 for me.
10-7. Right, come on then. Oh,
kicker! That's the famous Evans kicker.
He kicked over my bat. Cheers, Gav. Appreciate that.
One more.
One more set.
One more set.
Bloody hell. Double. Full box of balls here, Gav.
Sorry, I just fancied running.
Come on. This is it. England call up on the line.
Oh,
Raise your game.
Well played, Connor.
You say that, Gavin, then
Do you know what? It's deceiving the amount of spin on that.
might be good if it hit the ball. I'm very sorry. I'm a heck.
Umpire.
Sheila Wall should be having me for that serve. No chance.
Come on.
The Cheyenne Siraj Classic at 10-all.
Let.
Didn't like it.
He's going for broke. He must feel pressured.
I just want to look good on the cameras. Just one point.
Hey!
Too much time spent in the cafe and not on the court.
Okay.
5-2. On Dima.
Yay! I've still got legs.
Feeling very disappointed in myself here. 2-6.
Oh,
Just getting worse and worse here.
it's one of the cheap ones. Take them all.
What was you looking for?
It's a Paris ball, that. Right, here we go.
I can just feel the eyes from the thousands in the crowd burning in my head after that one.
8-2.
What did Fraser say about me on commentary?
Ooh.
Maybe learnt this one from somebody famous.
Ollie!
Looks like we're filming for a Gavin Evans highlight reel.
Oh!
Come back,
I didn't
John.
quite get the spin Alexis gets.
Comeback is on.
Spinny!
Never. It's a kicker. Famous last words. Gavin's a bit known for his kicker serve.
Okay,
9-0.
everybody on that camera, what serve am I going to do now?
9-0.
9-0. Right, my best serve coming up.
No! It was nice, but I think there was a bit of luck.
Sorry.
I think it went down. 10-9, match point. This is it. No, he's clubbed it. Cheers, Gav, you clearly still got it.
Cheers.
Enjoyed that.